So in that case, it wasn't necessarily Wall Street, but it was, I'm sorry, greed and solving the short-term issues there. So let me point out here a couple other things about this story. Who is responsible for innovation? Who is responsible for branding? Who is responsible for making sure that our products fit the marketplace of today? The answer is not the frontline workers. They don't have, I mean, they're making ding-dongs, they're making ho-hos, they're making, whatever they're making. It is the responsibility of management to sort out those issues. So who fell short of their responsibility? In my opinion, it was management. They had every opportunity to change in more substantial ways. But again, they chose not to. They just chose to dissolve the company, put a pile of money in their pocket, and move on to whatever happened next. And so Wall Street, but also greed, are typically bad reasons for downsizing. A third one, is, again, in some ways related to that story of Hostess, and I could give you lots of other examples, but Hostess, the management blamed the workers for the problem, or they blamed customers, or they blamed somebody. Is it bad to blame somebody else for your own problems? You bet. I don't care if that's personal or corporate or whatever the issue is. Blaming is typically a bad thing. And so what we saw is to do this kind of process, it better be done for good reasons. And people need to understand what those reasons are. And so it shouldn't be sprung on you. I mean, there's all sorts of other issues here. So part of what we want to do here is talk about then, how do you go about ethically downsizing an organization? I got to tell you, that's a hard question to answer, because no matter what you choose, there are going to be consequences and there's going to be pain. And so what we want to do is make sure people understand, they can appreciate, give them options, give them flexibility if they're moving on to another job. I mean, all sorts of things are better in this process. But to do downsizing ethically, and let me give you a couple strategies. One is early retirements. Or voluntary exits. Okay, so what do you do here? We have folks on the right in this country right now that think that people should work until they die and not retire, because if they retire, they're a burden to society, they should be contributing to society. And yeah, well, kind of. My concern with that is in a recession, and we're likely to have a recession sometime soon, and that's just the nature of how a capitalist system works. You go through the ups and downs, and I'm not saying anything about much of anything when I say that, except it's probably going to happen. So if we're in a downturn, don't you guys want me and people like me to retire? Because if I retire, that opens up a job slot for you across the system in a systemic way. And so the idea is you want people, in this case, to potentially early retire. So they've hopefully saved enough money in their 401ks, or they may have other job opportunities or whatever, and you allow those people to go. We did that one time. I was on a school board, and we were having significant financial problems, and so we offered an early buyout. And we had half a dozen teachers that were older that we wanted to go because we didn't think they were very good teachers, if ever, but certainly not anymore. All of those people stayed. Who left? The good teachers who had opportunities to go do something else were the ones who left. Is there a real consequence when you go down this path. You may lose some of your best people, your most talented, your most connected. You may also lose a ton of institutional knowledge that if they're gone, they may not be able to perform those tasks anymore because nobody knows how to do that stuff. One of the, and again, I'm talking current events here, but we just had a huge flood in Texas. Well, one of the issues is we had laid off, downsized a bunch of people out of the weather service, federal weather service, and okay, some of the folks who left knew how to do stuff, knew how to make the connections, and then the new people that hadn't even showed up yet, but the people who were left didn't necessarily know how to do any of that stuff. Was that kind of a bad scenario that not only good people left, but you lost this institutional knowledge about how to be an effective organization in some real sense? So to me, that's a more ethical way to do it, is to offer people the option to pay them some severance, some whatever you want to call it, as a way to get them to voluntarily bolt the company. Is that better than mandatory? I'm going to pick you, and you, and guess what? You're now gone. Security shows up and escorts you out of the out of the building. Well, yeah, it's probably more ethical than that. Although if we don't get enough this way, what do you got to do next? Okay. And so a second way to do this is to focus. And focus simply means, what is it we do? What is our core mission? And let's make sure we get ourselves aligned on delivering on that core mission. And typically when you do that, you discover you got outliers. People that are doing jobs that don't really have all that much to do with our core mission, and they're not adding much value. And so streamlining the organization may be, frankly, very helpful in sorting out, kind of how we got in trouble, our costs, all the other issues. But to focus a bit on that is pretty important. A third, more ethical way, and I mentioned Amazon a minute ago. Amazon said we got 2 layers of management that are in the way. They're not facilitating to make it harder for us to do our jobs and to run our business. And so the notion of streamlining anyway, may actually be a reasonable answer. Does that still mean you got a bunch of people that you're going to let go? The pain of all of that? You bet. All sorts of issues. And frankly, it's kind of what I'm saying, is when you go down this path, you're going to have some pain. My sense is a good organization is going to suck it up, take the pain, and move on. Now, one of the problems with all this stuff, if you don't focus and you don't properly streamline, what happens is the people who are left, who are already hurting because they've seen their friends and colleagues leave, and they're now doing at least 2 jobs, maybe 3, more stuff is dropped on their desk to handle. Okay, a normal person has a limited amount of time and energy to work. You can't do all that stuff. And so if you're not going to help the employees figure out how to focus, figure out what's really important, you create undue stress, and you're going to have other people who probably will go, yeah, I can't do this, and they bolt, and they take their stuff with them. There's a number of other issues that are going to show up here. And so let me just tell you, what we've got right now is a lot of organizations are trying to figure out how to downsize, whether it's colleges, universities, Microsoft is going through stuff, Google is going through stuff. Pick an organization, you're going to find at some point in time they're going to be going through downsizing. And so the question is it ought to be done carefully and empathetically and wisely. So what we had, you all are well aware of how this works, but you had Elon Musk being charged with downsizing the federal government in dramatic ways. I mean, not just cutting a person here, cutting the person there, but dramatic stuff. And they did it as cavalierly, it's my opinion, cavalierly and cruelly as basically they could do it. And I think there's better ways to do that stuff. Now, I would argue the federal government is a bureaucracy, got bloated. And so indeed, periodically you got to go through it and whack stuff out that is getting in the way of getting stuff done. You have new technology showing up that should eliminate the need for some of these people and some of this stuff, because technology can now handle it. And see, you've got better ways to do the kind of cutting